It is clear that learning happens by observing, listening, exploring, experimenting, and asking questions. But being interested, motivated, and engaged in learning is as important. Hello, all. I'm Tej, and I'm glad to be presenting Chezuba Talks, a podcast that brings you stories of incredible people doing remarkable work for communities. I'm joined today by Randen of Earthwin, a nonprofit working in the area of education, more specifically STEAM education: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Randon, in his own words, is foremost a single father of three daughters who are his inspiration. Having worked as a financial advisor for a very large, well known firm, he felt out of alignment and way out of integrity. The rest, as you say, is history. Let's hear how Earthwind was born and how it is changing the way children learn while doing. Welcome, Randon.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Randon, I'm an educator myself, and I'm very interested in what you are about to share. My first question to you is, who came up with that lovely name?
Randon? Well,
Earthwind.
oh, I thought you meant Randon. Well, I'll tell you, my mom came up with Randon, and I've never met anybody with that name before either. Earthwind was that arose because my one of my best friends, every time we went anywhere together, it just seemed like everything was a win. Everything we would
Mhm.
run into and everything we would do, we'd go, of course it happened that way. Of course it worked perfectly. It's a win. And what we really wanted, when I was creating the beginning of the company, was I wanted that feeling for a company and a culture and really for the outcome of our planet, a win for the earth, for people to be stoked about the wins that we can all have on a daily basis.
So you feel very strongly about the earth and climate change and doing something to, bring it to some sort of equilibrium.
Yeah, I started I started making money at a young age, uh, like 24. I was making pretty good money, and it kept rolling forward from there. And I realized by the time I was 45, 40, I just started to feel out of alignment because my purpose in life was to make money so that I could make uh, other people money so that they would help get other people to give me their money so that I can make them more money and then I could make more money. And it was really hollow of purpose and meaning. Um, really, in the beginning, when this started, I always had a deep connection with the outdoors. I've always skied and rock climbed, and I've camping, and we're very lucky here in the Pacific Northwest to have such easy access to the forest and the beauty. And I raised my kids going out in the forest, and as they grew older, I noticed there was a lot of anxiety, especially as they got into junior high and high school. And
Mhm.
I have three daughters, and they're my everything, my inspiration, my life, my love, my hope. And gosh, when they were young, they were just absolutely the funniest. We were the funniest crew. And now, as they got older, they didn't want to have children. And our house was always the house with all the kids that would come. You have three daughters, obviously other kids want to hang out.
Right. It's
And they're
like,
they're
yeah, the
very
hub.
beautiful and fun and dynamic, right? And all of the kids had the same uh, feeling. They didn't want to have bring children into this world, and that made me really sad. And here I am
Mhm.
working for money, so that what? Hopefully, I can retire and get a bigger house and take more vacations. You know, so what? We're watching the largest collapse of our ecosystems at least in mankind's history. And I don't want to just retire as a consumer and with a bad game of golf. I and look in my daughter's eyes and not feel like I at least tried. I don't know if I'm going to be successful, but gosh, I'm going to go down trying. I'm going to try and make the world a better place. I'm going to try and make an impact. I'm going to try and leave something for them. That was my real thrust of
That's the
motivation.
reason.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. A doting father, thinking about the future of their daughters. This is just amazing. You brought things into perspective, but money is important, right? You need to do something, you need
Yeah.
money for that.
No money, no mission every day. That's,
Yeah.
that was another thing is in developing this, other than getting it started, I believe it can be self-sustaining. Really, the fundraising mechanisms today in foundations and the way nonprofits are operating is really broken. Um, there are over 1.5 million nonprofits, and they're all out there
Hmm.
trying to do good, right? And every cause is
Right.
good, and every intention is good. And some of them, actually, some of them have better intention and better causes and are less funded. And some are huge with a lot of middle management and structure and overhead,
Yeah, there
and
is,
they
yeah,
get
there
tons
is
of money.
disparity.
The problem is that the the money, these large foundations are really stodgy. They're old, they're institutions, and the people working in them, it's like being in government. And they do their
Hmm.
job and they need to perform their job and have certain metrics that they answer to so that they can get that
Right.
money next year and spend it all. And so they always seemingly spend their money doing the same thing that they did the year before and on the same causes. And they say, oh, we have our nonprofits that we've been supporting for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years that give the same results that they've been getting. And when you look around, the results are not impactfully getting in better or improving. I go to Buckminster Fuller's great quote where to change things, you got to create something new that makes the old way obsolete. And when you
Yeah.
come up with something truly disruptive and truly impactful, most of the old institutions don't know what to do with it because it doesn't fit their old paradigm metrics. And so that's something that we've run into, and it's something that we seek to change with our model.
Let's take a break to understand what Chezuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chezuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chezuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chezuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chezuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest. Right. So, creating disruption is what leads to growth. That's true
Ah,
in every aspect of life.
yeah, that's
Right.
so well put. So
Yeah.
well put.
And when you that's a new way of looking at nonprofits. Actually, I never thought of it. That some nonprofits are just running for the sake of running, uh, because they have committed to that cause, not thinking of something else. So your thought process into getting into Earthwind is to focus on STEAM subjects so that children are encouraged to think more from the conservation perspective.
That is the actually that's a very interesting question, and it's something that we bump up against. Um, that is actually the entry point, and that is the viability of what we're creating. And it's the first touch point. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're utilizing systems that are already in place and proven to be effective, and we're recreating them in a gamified environment so that they're more accessible and fun. And then we're using that as a launching point to go to other steps. Let me give you an example. So, my uh, a little girl in a local school, she went to the principal and she says, Mrs. Wilson, I want to plant trees. She's in the seventh grade, right? I want to plant trees to offset the carbon footprint of our new gymnasium that was just built. And
Oh,
the principal says, "That's nice. That's nice, May. Run to class. Go talk to your teacher." And then she goes to her teacher and she says, um, I, teacher, I would like to plant trees to offset the carbon footprint of our gymnasium. That's nice. Sit
uh-huh,
down. We got to do your work. Go talk to your science teacher. Then she goes,
uh-huh.
Mr. Douglas, I would like to plant trees to offset carbon
Yeah.
footprints. And he says, that's great. Go talk to your principal. And she gave up. That was the end of the story.
uh,
And so kids want to be engaged. And today, more than any other time, they have been thrust for the last decade into high feedback environments in the form of games. And so they're gaming. They're playing Minecraft. They're playing all these games that are online. They're being babysat
right.
by their devices, and it's so much
True.
information. But then they go to school and it's like Little House on the Prairie. It's from 100 years ago. They're still using the same
It's
tactics.
outdated. Yes.
It's outdated and it's slow, and they're not getting the stimulation they need. And the number one thing that we're hearing from talking to literally hundreds of educators, principals, child development specialists is engagement. These kids are, drooling on their desk and they don't know how to get them to engage. And apathy and depression are at an all-time high, engagements at a record low. And so we are approaching this from that angle of how to first stimulate them. Well, experiential learning has been known for decades and decades to be
Yes.
the best way
Absolutely.
to really fire up our children, engage them, help them apply what they're learning in school. And it also creates up to 6 times the neural connections and retention rates, right? So all educators are pretty much like that's the way to go. But today, especially in America, educators don't have the bandwidth or time to do extracurricular projects. And so they're kind of stuck. So kids want to be engaged. Educators want to do experiential learning projects. They don't have time and they're held up by outdated processes. Um, the number one topic that kids want to engage with is climate change and sustainability projects. They want to be valued with real world problems. They want to save the whales. They want to save the dolphins. They want to save the forest. They want to save, all of these things. They want to make an
All of
impact
that.
on
Yeah. Mhm.
poverty. They see what's happening on the internet. And what do we give them? That's nice, little girl. Go take your seat, right? So our first entry point
Yeah.
was to utilize what they're using in school, STEM education, and to do real world projects to engage our kids, to make them feel valued, to make them have the sense of pride for making an impact. Um, And then from there, that's the beginning. And then to guide
Mm-hmm.
them through actionable projects that will follow them from sixth grade into university. And it's actually an app that will follow them and grow with them. And the projects get more intense, more challenging, and it's like leveling
Mm-hmm.
up. When you think about how kids are interacting with their games and devices, one of the most stimulating pieces to that is kids like to create avatars and they like to create
Yeah.
characters. It's
Yes.
because they can identify with that avatar, and that avatar is moving around and doing things and creating things, and that avatar levels up. And that avatar, when it levels up for achievements, it gets badges, rewards, it gets powers, it gets more energy, it gets more bright, it gets more rewards, right? Well, what
Mm-hmm.
if we had a game that avatar is leveling up as you yourself are leveling up in the real world and
Very
creating real
interesting.
world achievements? That's what we're creating
Yeah.
here. And that's the inspiration. And I think even more importantly, foundations want to fund impact. They want, at the end of the day, there's three questions they ask. Do I care about what you care about? That's number one. Number two is why should I give to you? There's 1.5 million nonprofits out there, and there's probably 100 that do something in STEAM education. Why you? Or why are you going? If I give you $100,000 or $1,000, what impact are you going to have, right? And then the third question
Mm-hmm.
is, do I trust you? Do you have a good team? Do you have fiscal responsibility? But the second question is impact. And 90% of all the foundations, the feedback that I've talked to, the feedback that I get, they realize, and they in the reporting, that a great deal of the reporting that is coming back from nonprofits to the foundation is fluff. It's not um, trackable data. And so, if we
Mm-hmm.
had an army of kids doing actionable projects and doing audits in their schools to make their school become more sustainable, whether it's energy conservation or creation, water conservation or preservation, tree planting, plastic reduction, there's a number of things that all of these kids can do for their school. We had a database that actually showed what actions each school or what the state of each school was. And then we can move out from there into businesses and large buildings. We can learn, and also into the home. What is each person's home doing? And a lot of it is going to be based on integrity, which is the greatest lesson that we teach within the
Exactly.
application
Yes. Yeah.
is, it's integrity. It's a sense of radical responsibility and extreme ownership for your actions and your community. So yeah, STEM
Right.
education is an entry point, but the greater thing is to create a database of trackable data of impact so that foundations can say, now I understand, yes, I can invest in that. I hope that was
Right.
a good answer of your question.
Yes, it was. You delved deep into why you need to start at where you're starting and how you aim to progress as a child is also growing. But Randen, tell me, gamification basically, uh, you know, I would assume that you faced a situation where somebody must have said, "Oh, not another app." Did you ever
Oh,
come across
yeah.
something like that?
Yes, of course. Well, I think gamification of education is really taking off because I think for the most part, can all see that education is outdated and needs modeling and needs to be brought into this century, right? And you look into your phone at any point in time and you start scrolling, there's literally millions of apps that sit in the vast wasteland. Uh,
Exactly. Yes.
right.
Yes.
I think the difference here is we ran an alpha test on this on a web app version of this strategy. And so there's existing curricula that a lot of uh, educators are using to follow so that kids can do an actionable project for their school. And there's one especially, it was developed by the World Wildlife Fund. And you can go into the World Wildlife Federation, dig through their website, and you can't find it to start. It's hidden in there somewhere. We had to dig for it, but they helped several other organizations. Like in Oregon, there's Oregon Green Schools. There's the Environmental Center here locally. There's in Washington State, there's Earth Gen, and they use that same curricula, and it works, and it's step by step. The problem is, and so we know it works, right? The problem is it's teacher centric, and it's a boring old business form PDF, and you print it off, and the teacher educates with it. And the kids, they can do their project 1 hour a week during their lunch break. They skip lunch one day a week to do their project. Well, so it takes all year to do that project. And then moving forward is slow, and they get to where they've done an audit, they've got a strategy, they've built a budget, and they got approvals from the teacher. In here, to even put a raised garden bed at a school, you got to get approval from the principal, the vice principal, the superintendent, and the school district. That's a lot, right? Who does that go on? It always lands on the teacher, who's already overworked and underpaid. And then
Right.
now we got to fund it. So then organizations would reach out to us or the environmental center, or there's five other organizations. Who does that land on? The teacher. Funding always falls short. And so then what do? Well, they do brownie bake sales, they do car washes, they do art auctions, they do something, that's largely ineffective. It takes the kids off course. It leaves them vacillating in wonderment of whether or not the project's going to move forward. Then they get the money, then they can complete the project. Well, now they're at the end of the school year and they completed their project. Summer's coming, and what happens? Nothing. They aren't
Mm-hmm.
celebrated. Nobody knows about it. There's no a sharing of the accomplishment, and then it falls in again. It falls flat. At the and then next year, this school who built a sustainability program has to start from scratch, from square one, zero, without a sustainability club. The teacher doesn't want to volunteer again. The students don't want to participate again. And so now they have no teacher, no students, and it has to like organically start again from scratch. And so it doesn't continue. So we wanted to solve for that. But what we saw was an opportunity to create something that would solve for the funding, solve for the sustainability of the program, and the viability. And so, first of all, our program, our first year, we received more student submissions than any other organization in our region, and
Oh,
because of the way
nice.
that we structured it. And the students would
Mm-hmm.
log online, and they would, we turned it into a challenge, and they had to answer what, why, what, now what, right? And so they submitted a video expressing what project they wanted to do, why it was important, and why people should care about their Earth Wind project. And then we funded the most likely projects. Okay, so in that process, they applied. I mean, these kids at seventh grade were doing analysis of how fast a tree grows, how much carbon it sequesters out of the environment. I mean, real science. It
Wow.
was amazing. They were doing how much gas a car burns idling for 15 minutes in front of the school, how much energy could be saved if it didn't. They did surveys. They did how many insects would be able to thrive if they built a pollinator pathway. I mean, real application of real stuff. I'm telling you,
Beautiful.
sixth, seventh,
That's
eighth grade,
amazing. Yeah.
college level work. It was amazing. So exciting. So,
It is. It sounds very exciting. Lovely. But let me play the devil's advocate here. Randon, gamification affects users in very, very different ways. It
yeah,
depends largely on their personality traits also. So wouldn't learning depend on the specific characteristics of users? I mean, see, the teacher has to teach to a class, right? She or he cannot teach few students based on only their intellectual capacity. So when you talk about these at the end of the year, we are back to square one. But the teacher also is challenged by different abilities. So how is gamification addressing that?
that's a great question. I think what's mostly needs to be addressed in our society is the idea of the bell curve. A friend shared this to me with me one time, and I was like, "Oh my God, he nailed it." Um, so we all know how grading happens on a bell curve, correct? Yeah, you
Yeah.
get the bell curve, um,
Yes.
and so if everybody in the class was extraordinarily smart. We're talking about the highest IQ in the world, and they're in the same class, and we're grading on a bell curve. That means that the kid at the lowest end of the bell curve is still extraordinary, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, that also, if we move that class and say, let's say that they're the most marginalized, challenged population, underserved, and
Mhm.
they're just barely hanging on, and they don't have good education, good educators, they're underfunded, and they're not well cared for. There's still extraordinary kids in there. However, as a group, let's say that just by chance this particular group is not the most extraordinary kids in the world, and they're still graded on the
Mhm.
bell curve. Well, that means the highest achieving kid is still lower than the lowest achieving kid on the other side, in the other group,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
But that kid gets an A and the other kid gets an F. So, this whole idea that we all need to move as a unit and be judged and graded against each other is completely false. Kids learn and grow at their own rate, and they're inspired by what they're inspired by. And you think about a little girl coming home from, I always think about girls because I had girls, but a little girl coming home and saying, "Hey, Daddy, I brought my report card." "Oh, very good, honey. I see you got an A in writing, you got an A in PE, you got an A in social studies and science. Oh, but you got a C in math. You need to work on your math."
Hmm. Hmm. That's
And then
like standard dialogue.
that's a standard dialogue. Do you see how wrong that is? Because not everybody is
Yeah.
going to be a doctor. Not everybody is going to be involved in student driven sustainability projects. Not everybody is going to be um, a scientist. Not everybody is going
Yeah.
to be a
Whatever.
football
Yeah.
player. We want to take the kids that are interested in this topic and show them a way that they can move at their pace very quickly. And I didn't get to say before about you were asking being the devil's advocate about how we grow this. Well, it's the funding mechanism. The funding mechanism is using their social platforms to share. The average student project costs $1,000. Okay.
Mhm.
Inside of the average education community is 3,000 people. That's 600 students, faculty, and staff, another 1,500 family members, and then another 1,500 extended family members. Each of these people has on average 4 to 500 social connections. But just there, in that 3,000 people in the community, to fund a $1,000 project is 30 cents each. So instead of taking kids off course to do um, peer a fundraiser, doing a bake sale or a car wash, we could do a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, and what happens is that we raise the money twice as fast, but the kids get the recognition that they so deeply crave. That's the whole purpose of social media. Is everybody wants recognition. They want to be seen. Everybody wants to be special
Validation.
and do something meaningful. And so we're utilizing those tools, and that creates the enthusiasm, the excitement, and the sustainability for the program. One of our kids last year, a seventh grader, started a project, did it all on her own. She funded it, and then we shared it. And then some high school kids picked up that project and they started a coalition. Well, five kids started it, and they started a coalition, and now there's 30 kids from five different high schools doing that project in all the schools in our Central Oregon region. That's how it works.
Wow, that is a
Yeah,
success story.
yeah.
That's wonderful, wonderful. But again, sorry for
Oh, I love
playing the
this.
devil's advocate every time. But when you look at Facebook or social media or Instagram or whatever it is, parents don't want their children to spend so much time on that. Now, if you give them a project that is already also going to ask them to seek validation and likes from peers and other
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
wouldn't that also create some kind of competition, a negative kind of competition?
Yeah, we're certainly not going to do anything on TikTok. Um, I It's our belief that TikTok is the scourge of our attention. And we're going to use Facebook. Facebook is bleeding youth users. They don't have they're not acquiring new users. But there's also the good part about Facebook, what it's done in our planet as far as spreading knowledge into the vast reaches of our society. There's been a lot of it's also affected politics negatively and positively. We know that, but the truth of the matter is kids are doing this and adults are doing this, and it's not going away. And so
It's
how
not
can
going
we
away, yeah.
it's not going away. And to say that we can make it go away or to stop it is being ignorant. And so how can we do something in a positive way that shows kids what it's really meant for, the spreading of good information and technology, and the application of meaningful impact. And Facebook is the best format for that. It's more meaningful content on Facebook, and they're sharing their accomplishments.
Randon, tell me, does this app or does Earthwind require parental consent?
Actually, that's one of the main things that we were really focusing on from the beginning is not the parental consent, but how to bring the other generations into the conversation. Because when we first started this program, we started with the big question of how do we make the most impact? And we had to identify the problem. And what the problem is, and please hear this with tongue in cheek. We identified the greatest problem on our planet is in Western cultures, women 25 to 55. And I like to say it because I say it like that because people go, oh, women? Women 25 to 55 drive 80% of consumer spending. And so we're using the children to reach them and to help impact that. And we really want to make this a multi-generational connection device. And so not only that, but then our elders, 65 and over, have been they've sidelined themselves from the
Disconnected, yes.
conversation. And so, how can they have a sense of connection with their grandchildren and be part of the conversation of what's going on instead of sidelining themselves? And how do we educate from the bottom up instead of from the top down? Well, when little Sally accomplishes a goal or achievement, mom is alerted. Mom has to be on the app as well to follow along for Sally to even be doing this. And
Oh,
so that
wow.
creates child safety with everything that's done. And also, mom gets an alert, and it prompts her to give Sally a high five and say, good job. Well, then. the app prompts mom to learn the same thing that Sally learned through the same little lesson. They're very short. It's micro achievements with micro rewards to create macro impact. And so when mom learns that same lesson, Sally gets points, and it prompts Sally to give mom a high five. Well, the same thing when grandpa is sitting home watching TV or out on the golf course, he can say, "Oh my God, look what my granddaughter achieved." Give her a high five. And then it prompts
Mm.
grandpa to learn the same lesson
Yeah,
so
those
Sally can,
connections. Yeah.
yeah. So multi-generational connections and spreading awareness. That's our mission statement
USP, you could
is
call it a USP.
our
It's wonderful.
Our mission statement is to educate and expand awareness of mindful living for global well-being. And that's what we're doing. And we're using the thrust of children and their enthusiasm to do it.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful way of connecting the family, the world, and a lot of thought has gone into creating this. I can see that, and you're very passionate about it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
You have convinced me with your math skills, you have convinced me with your reasoning skills, and I can see you are a critical thinker as well. So that speaks a lot for Earthwin.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Well, the purpose of gamification is to motivate a child to want to learn. And in most cases, they won't even realize that they are learning because they're having so much fun. Thank you very much, Randen, for sharing knowledge about Earthwind. I'm positive that you will reach many more learners and create a healthy impact on the education field in general. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, friends. I'll see you all again in the next episode. Till then, goodbye.